Hello, welcome to another Healthy Minds workshop live stream. Today, I'll be talking about a toolkit for stopping impulsive behaviors, and I've titled it, Stop Doing That. Hey, so this workshop is hosted by me, Dr. Angela Eno, as part of a collaboration between a few different organizations at Utah State University. The first would be Counseling and Psychological Services, otherwise known as CAPS. Also the College of Education and Human Services, and the School of Graduate Studies. So these three organizations on campus came together to fund my position, which is with CAPS as the College of Education and Human Services embedded psychologist. So this live stream is one of the things I do as part of that position. I also do a fair amount of outreach to the College of Education, presentations for faculty, staff, graduate advisors on pretty much any mental health related topic. And then in addition to that, I provide free counseling to graduate students in the College of Education. If you're interested in seeing me for individual therapy and you are a graduate student in the College of Education, or if you know someone who is that you'd like to refer to me, you can call CAPS at CAPS front desk at 435-797-1012, or you can email me directly at angela.eno@usu.edu. Just a quick note, although I am talking about mental health related topics in this live stream, this is a workshop and is not intended as a substitute for mental health care. So if you or somebody that you know is in need of help, I really strongly encourage you to seek out a qualified therapist. All right, so I want to lay a little bit of groundwork before kind of getting into this, and that is to talk about something called the cognitive behavior therapy model. The essence of this model is that the things that we think impact the things that we feel, and the things that we feel impact the things that we think. And both of those impact and are impacted by our emotions. All of those impact and are impacted by our bodily sensations. So we as human beings just exist in kind of a reciprocal feedback loop that goes over and over again between the things we think, the things we feel, the things we do, the things we observe happening in our bodies. And that kind of underlies a big piece of this particular toolkit that I'm going to be presenting about today. You can download this particular handout, the belief-driven formulation, if you find it helpful, at the website psychologytools.com. Click on downloads, all resources, and then you can just scroll through the list of their resources until you see it there. All right, so we're going to get into the tool that I'll be presenting on today, which is called chain analysis. Chain analysis comes from this book called DBT Skills Training, Handouts and Worksheets. So this is a book that we therapists will often use in a group therapy format, presenting a whole host of coping skills. It's a very big book. It's really popular for a lot of different things. Originally, this was developed for people with borderline personality disorder, but as this book has been around for a while, we've really discovered that it can be helpful for a wide variety of things. So I often use this when clients are coming in with eating disorders, with anxiety. Some of it is even helpful with depression, definitely any kind of impulsive behavior that they'd like to stop doing. And so chain analysis is just kind of one little tool out of a giant toolbox that they provide. You can also, by the way, buy this book on Amazon pretty easily or any bookstore, really. It's a pretty popular book. Okay, so let's talk first about your options for solving any problem behavior, any problem in your life. Of course, the first option is very obvious. If there's a way that you can solve the problem, then you can solve the problem. You change the situation, avoid it, leave it, get out of the situation for good. Problem solved, right? Sometimes when we have a problem, that is easily solvable. All it takes is a little bit of problem solving skills, maybe a little interpersonal effectiveness skills, as in having some finesse to handle relationships appropriately, having good boundaries, that sort of thing. And sometimes we just need some actionable steps. We take those steps and the problem is solved. This could be a problem like, I'm hungry. Okay, so I go get something to eat. Problem solved, no longer an issue. It could be, I'm angry with a friend of mine. Okay, I have the conversation, I express my feelings, we work it out, problem solved, and then it's no longer a problem. It would be lovely if every problem that we had in life was this simple. Often they're not, but sometimes they are, and that's nice. If you need to brush up on your problem solving skills, I have found a little problem solving worksheet here that you can download from therapistaid.com. I'll post a link to these slides at the bottom of the video after I finish recording so that you can download that. Okay. The next thing, if it's a problem that we can't solve, is we can try to feel better about the situation. So sometimes we can manage to change our emotional response to the problem. There are a handful of skills that can be really helpful when that's the case. One of those types of skills would be something we call emotion regulation skills. Comes from the same book, that DBT skills training, handouts and worksheets book. I also talked about some of those emotion regulation skills when I presented on anxiety and depression in another Healthy Minds live stream called Your Mind Lies to You. So if you look at the College of Education and Human Services YouTube channel, there's a playlist, and in that playlist, there's a video called Your Mind Lies to You, and it presents some of these skills. In there, I talk about something called cognitive distortions, which are thinking errors that we frequently make that can make us feel really cruddy about a situation. We all do them, but the more frequently and the more intensely we do them, the worse we're going to feel. So you can check out that video to hear a little bit more about cognitive distortions if you're not really sure what all that is or how to do that. Another thing we can do is to reframe the situation. And what reframe really means is just think of it in a different way. One very common reframe that I will use with folks is when they are in need of support from somebody or need somebody to do something and they feel like they're a burden. I will often challenge this by saying, well, think about if that person needed support from you, would you think of them as a burden? And also think about the ways that we benefit when we help others. It's good for our emotional health to do things for other people. And so there's a reframe to help you think a little bit differently about asking for help. Sometimes we just can't find a way to feel better about a situation. It's just not a great situation. Sometimes maybe it's a really big crisis that's happening in our lives. It's a terrible situation that we're in. We just don't want to be there. And it's not something that we can solve. So we might practice what we call distress tolerance skills. Distress tolerance are those short-term kind of get through the moment strategies. And those can range anything from, let's say you're just especially tired and not in the mood to be in a class or at a meeting. Distress tolerance might just mean that you tolerate the fact that you're there, knowing that it's going to end. You just get through it. But distress tolerance can also apply when we're in a more kind of immediate crisis where our emotions are really, really heightened by the situation that's going on. And so we have this problem that's creating a lot of distress, and our response, the emotions that are showing up, our body's reactions are also really difficult for us, but they might not be changing right away. So there are some things that we can do that can just help us get through the fact that our body's reacting this way, get through the fact that we have this awful situation at hand. I did another Healthy Minds live stream about some of those skills, and those are called distress tolerance skills or crisis survival skills. I named the video for that. What did I name that? Getting through a short-term crisis, I think is what I called it. You can find that in the Healthy Minds live stream playlist as well. Lots and lots of tools there if you're just trying to tolerate a problem. Now, those skills can be awesome, they can be helpful, but they're also just short-term strategies. And tolerating a problem is kind of like what we often call in the therapy world white knuckling. And so if I'm white knuckling something, let's say this thing of lotion here, and I'm squeezing it really tightly, and I'm holding on. This takes a lot of effort. I'm going to get tired of it, right? That's what distress tolerance skills are like. You're kind of just white knuckling. You're just getting through the difficult moment. You're doing what you have to do to survive it psychologically, not always physically, right? It's not something you could sustain forever, and it's not likely to have a great long-term impact. So the next set of skills have to do with practicing acceptance of the situation. People often will confuse the two. Acceptance and distress tolerance are related. Both of them involve giving up on the idea of solving the problem or making the problem go away. But distress tolerance is more, clenched fists as we're dealing with this. It's really effortful. It's a short-term strategy. Acceptance is truly accepting the situation as it is, truly letting go of any urges to change it, to escape it, and kind of a longer-term strategy for allowing things to be as they are. If I were to use the same analogy of this like lotion bottle here, instead of gripping it really tightly and squeezing it and getting tired of it eventually, I might just set it down but have it near me, or I might hold on to it, but hold on to it with a more relaxed hand, and it doesn't require so much effort. I could hold this for quite some time. So that's kind of an idea of the difference between distress tolerance and acceptance. I did a little mini bit of a presentation for USU Education Week on mindfulness, which all of those are potentially a component of acceptance-based skills, although there are a whole lot more that I haven't done a presentation on, and maybe we'll save that for next semester. But that's another one of our options for solving the problem. So just as a quick review, our options for solving any problem so far, we've talked about solve it if it's solvable, just fix it, problem solve, get out of there, whatever it is that you need to do. We've talked about tolerating it with white knuckling, short-term strategies for just getting through the moment. And we've talked about acceptance. If we don't want to do any of those, another option that we always have is to stay miserable or possibly make it worse. And it might seem like a funny thing to mention, but actually a lot of us turn to this. And oftentimes when we have an impulsive behavior that we're trying to stop, which is what we're talking about today, this is the thing that we're doing with that impulsive behavior. We're, instead of using one of these other skills to solve our problem, we are choosing to act in ways that are not skillful. We're flying by the seat of our pants. We're not being planful. We're just doing whatever we feel like doing in those moments. And it's creating more problems for us. If it wasn't, you probably wouldn't be watching this live stream right now. Okay, so let's get into what we can do instead of choosing to stay miserable. A couple of things I want to note too, and these all come from the same kind of the same type of therapy in the same book that the chain analysis comes from. There are a few assumptions that I want us to start out with right away before even getting into the chain analysis. The first step is, I think, in my opinion, is making these assumptions about ourselves and about others, because they give us a little bit of slack and help us not to get involved in the shame game and the blame game. So these are some assumptions you want to make. We're all doing the best that we can with what we have, with what we know, with our capacity currently. We all want to improve our lives and be happy. We can all make the necessary changes and grow. We may not have caused all of our problems, but we have to solve them anyway. And so there may be something that's happened in your life, or somebody in your life that has some influence that, has contributed to the problem that you're struggling with. And yet the problem is yours to handle, even though you may not have been the original source of it. We have to change our own behavior and responses, and sometimes alter our environment in order for our lives to change and improve. We can't just kind of keep doing the same thing that we've always been doing and hope that things are different for us. And then finally, if we want to create change, we have to change the chain of events that cause unwanted behaviors. And that is, in essence, what chain analysis is all about. We're going to talk about the chain of events that leads to doing a behavior that you really wish you hadn't done and really wish you wouldn't do again. All right, so chain analysis is all about analyzing our behavior. We look at what are those links in the chain that led from where I was to where I got. And we really want to break all that down. And we also want to think about how we repair the damage that might have been done by that impulsive behavior. So as you can see from this diagram, it's pointing to all the different links in the chain. It's really easy for us to think about the prompting event most of the time when we have an impulsive behavior. Occasionally, we're not exactly sure what led to that, but that's easier to identify than some of these other things, we'll say. The thing that's definitely easy to identify pretty consistently is the problem behavior we're doing and the consequences that we have as a result. So you can start anywhere on this chain that might be easiest for you to do. You don't have to start in any particular order, although I'm going to talk about things in a particular order. But really, we're just fleshing out the whole chain, okay? So I'm doing this in a certain order. You don't have to do it in this order. You just want to do all these steps, okay? So the first thing you want to do is describe the problem behavior. So you think about, what is the thing I'm doing that's creating a lot of trouble for me? So I'm just going to use a really common example that we will frequently use in DBT, and that is, I went home and I ate a ton of ice cream, and now I don't feel so good. Maybe you're lactose intolerant. Maybe you just ate way more than you want to eat. Maybe it upset your stomach. It's against the goals that you've set for yourself, whatever reason, I've eaten ice cream that I did not want to eat, and I ate a ton of it. So let's figure out why I did it, what happened. So we're just going to write down, ate ice cream I didn't want to eat. That's our problem behavior. The next thing we want to do is describe the prompting event that started the chain of events leading to the problem behavior. So what might have led to me eating ice cream? Now, sometimes we have the insight and we know there was a thing that happened that created some emotional upset for me, and I know I've been a little off since then. Sometimes we don't know, and we have to sit and reflect a bit. Were there things that happened today that might have upset me? Okay, so in my hypothetical example, I've just eaten all of this ice cream. Let me stop and think, what might have happened in my day that could be a prompting event here? So let's say my prompting event is, I got bad feedback on something at work. And so I just write that down. So something that happened earlier today that was upsetting and could potentially have been a prompting event, bad feedback at work. So now I want to walk back to before that thing happened. And I want to say, was there anything going on at the time that this thing occurred that made my day harder? Was there anything going on that made it harder for me to handle getting that bad feedback from work? Okay, so just a couple of examples of those things that might have made it harder for me, that might have made me more vulnerable to having a bad reaction to that feedback, or a difficult reaction to that feedback. Well, maybe I haven't been sleeping very well, and so my emotions are just a little like out of check, and so that may be something that's leading me to be a little bit more vulnerable, to have my reactions be bigger than they normally would. Maybe I've already been feeling like I'm not doing a good job at work, and I've been extremely self-critical, and so I'm feeling especially sensitive and afraid. That's another thing that could be making me vulnerable. Maybe I didn't eat a balanced breakfast this morning or anyone at all. And so maybe at the same time I was getting that bad feedback, I was feeling depleted. I was feeling hungry, tired. I just wasn't in a good physical state to receive that news. It could be any of these things. It could have to do with your self-care. It could have to do with what kind of state of emotions you're in. There are a lot of factors that make us vulnerable to having a response that's a little bit bigger than we normally would. And sometimes we don't realize that in the moment. So looking at it and breaking it down afterwards can help us understand it better so that the next time we can see it coming a bit more. So the next thing we want to do is really break down in very excruciating detail the chain of events that led to the problem behavior. So we already know for sure there was some vulnerability. We already know what the prompting event was that we had a big reaction to. But what happened between that prompting event and our behavior? What went through our minds? What events occurred? What emotions did we feel? What physical sensations? What urges? What actions did we take? And be as detailed as possible as you make this list and write all of this down. You're basically kind of creating a map that helps you understand what was the pathway that I got from here to here to this thing I did that I wish I didn't do. How did I get from getting this bad feedback at work to eating all this ice cream when I got home? So let's talk about what some of those things might be. So I got the bad feedback and maybe I got a little bit defensive. So maybe that's an event. I might have argued with my boss about it or tried to make an excuse, and maybe the conversation got a little heated. Or maybe I didn't do that. But just the event of getting that feedback is really the only event I can think of. That's okay. Maybe after my boss gave me this difficult feedback, in my head, I started thinking about either, oh, this stupid job, I hate it. My boss doesn't get me. This is the worst. And I should just quit. And then maybe I started to think, oh, I can't quit because I have this and that responsibility that I have to do. And I kind of got myself snowballing a bit in the emotional place. Or maybe I had a totally different reaction. And the thoughts that I was having were, I'm just not good enough. It doesn't matter how hard I try. I mess everything up. And my thinking is getting a bit distorted here. Okay. Maybe I'm doing an excessive amount of self-blaming. Maybe the boss is saying, hey, here's a growth area I'd like you to work on. And that's kind of all they mean. But I'm hearing it as, hey, you're the worst employee I've ever had. You shouldn't even be alive. You're so ridiculously terrible at things, or maybe somewhere in between those two extremes. But at any rate, I want to identify what was the thinking that was going on for me with that. Maybe I was thinking, man, I'm doing the best I can. I'm so overwhelmed. I just can't keep up. And then maybe I spiraled into thinking about all the other things I can't keep up with and all the things I'm struggling with. What are the emotions that I might have had? Maybe some embarrassment, maybe some anger, maybe some sorrow, maybe some anxiety. What are they? Let's put a label on those. If you have a hard time identifying those emotions, I really recommend looking up feelingswheel.com. They have a really lovely little wheel there that it gets really specific with the emotion words, and that's very, very useful. Honestly, it's super useful, more useful than you think. Give it a try. And what were the physical sensations? Did I get a knot in my stomach, a lump in my throat? Did my muscles tense up? Did I feel tears welling up in my eyes? What did I have? Did I clench my fists out of anger? What did I do? What did I feel? What urges did I have? Did I have the urge to quit my job? Did I have the urge to punish myself? Did I have the urge to do something destructive? What did come up? Obviously, I had the urge to eat some ice cream. We know this because I did. And then what were the actions that I took? Maybe I finished out the day and then went home and ate my ice cream. Maybe I left a bit early. Maybe I didn't get my work done and then I felt even worse. And then that it contributed to more thoughts and more emotions. Whatever it is, be as detailed as you can about all the process that happened in that space between prompting event and problem behavior. The next thing we want to do is describe the consequences of the behavior, short-term and long-term, consequences in the environment and consequences within ourselves, and what harm did the behavior cause. And finally, as we look at all of these links in our chain, we want to think about and analyze, where could I have done something differently that might have helped? And it's all those skills that I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. So did I need to challenge some cognitive distortions? Was I getting really overly self-critical in a way that's a little bit irrational, even though it feels really rational and feels really true to me? Maybe I need to look at the cognitive distortions and check out my thinking and see, was my thinking a little screwy there? Was I being a little too self-critical? Was I going over the top? Was I imagining things that when my boss was thinking that were not the same as what she said to me or he said to me? Just kind of breaking down some of those thinking patterns. Were there other skillful behaviors I could have done instead of eating ice cream? Maybe I could have gone for a walk. Maybe I could have called a friend or a family member to talk out what I was feeling. Maybe I could have given myself a day off, taken a day off of work just to take better care of my mental health and my physical health so that I would be more efficient at work and be better able to handle what I'm doing. There's a whole bunch of different things I could have done just depending on the situation. And so figuring out what are those for you. If you're having a hard time thinking of them, maybe you can find somebody else in your life that can help you. If you find that it's consistently always difficult for you to figure out what to do, that might be an indication you ought to seek some therapy, just to have a therapist work through some of this with you and identify those targets. This is a big chunk of what we do as therapists, is understand what's going wrong for somebody, help kind of figure out what to target there and give them some tools for targeting that. And so if doing this chain analysis on your own, you're really just not able to come up with what might have worked to do this differently, you're really not able to make the change that you wanted to make, then maybe it's time to seek a therapist. And we want to develop a prevention plan in order to reduce our vulnerability to stressful events. So we want to think about, what are the things that I can do to do better self-care so that I'm a little less vulnerable to having this huge reaction? What can I do to build up my self-confidence? What can I do to take care of my emotional health and my physical health so that I'm showing up to each situation with the best possible version of myself? And we want to repair the important or significant consequences of the problem behavior as best we can. We want to make some apologies. We want to own what we did. We want to fix whatever can be fixed in the wake of what has happened here. And that is it for chain analysis. I do want to make a quick note that you can find all kinds of examples of chain analysis worksheets online. Some of them are blank versions that you can fill in yourself, and some actually have some examples that people have written that in. So if you are interested in using this tool, I would encourage you to get on and just find the handouts that work the best for you. Also, if you think that you might need to work on some of those skills, it wouldn't be a bad idea to purchase that DBT skills training book and work through them there. Chain analysis handouts will be in there as well as a lot of others. And I know you can get it in a hardback or a paperback copy or a Kindle version as well. And that is it for today. So thank you for hanging in there if you have. Next week, we'll be taking a break due to the Thanksgiving break. There won't be any workshop next week. When we return on the 3rd, I'll be talking about relationships that make you feel like you're going crazy. And signs that, maybe there's some abuse going on in this relationship. And hopefully, if you're in a relationship that makes you feel like you're going crazy, hopefully by watching this workshop, you'll have a better sense. Is this abuse? Is it not abuse? What's going on here? Why do I feel the way I do? Why am I questioning my perceptions, my memory, my interpretation of events? Am I a jerk? Are they a jerk? Is no one a jerk? That sort of information. On the 10th, I'll be talking about relationship effectiveness, balancing your needs with the needs of another person, and balancing that with maintaining the relationship and self-respect. And then finally, on Thursday, December 16th, not on Friday, I'll be speaking about the power of positivity, using some principles from something called positive psychology, which focuses instead on all the things that go wrong. It focuses on all the things that go right, and what people who tend to be especially happy do differently than people who don't. All right, have a good week, everybody.